2 in the morning, I just rolled over. 'Cause without you, there's no me.
The spotlight hit them like a freight train. 3 young men with silky harmonies captivating an entire generation.
'Cause you had my mind blown, oh, oh.
But behind those perfect choreographed moves and synchronized outfits, Next wasn't built on brotherhood. It was constructed on quicksand.
Only one, you're my wifey. Whenever you need it, yeah. Whenever you need it.
Imagine building your dream home on a foundation that's already cracking. While fans swooned over their perfect harmony on stage, backstage told a different story entirely. The recording studio often turned into a battleground where creative differences weren't just artistic disagreements, but deep-seated power struggles.
Oh, you the type of girl that have me do anything. You're my wifey.
We weren't brothers, one former studio engineer recalls overhearing RL say. We were business, partners who happened to sing together. The cracks were visible if you knew where to look. Album photo shoots frequently captured RL standing slightly apart from the Brown brothers. Interview dynamics showed the subtle disconnection. Tilo and Tweet finishing each other's sentences while RL articulated his own separate vision. As one industry insider put it, most groups implode because they can't handle failure. Next imploded because they couldn't handle success. The facade could only hold for so long before the truth would emerge. These weren't brothers in arms. They were reluctant allies in an industry that demanded they appear united. The contrast in their origins wasn't just biographical footnotes. It was the invisible fault line that would eventually split Next apart. In the harsh streets of Gary, Indiana, young Tilo Brown wasn't just raising himself. He was raising his little brother Tweet too. Their childhood home wasn't a sanctuary, but a battlefield where survival was the daily goal. Some nights I'd steal food just so Tweet could eat, Tilo once confessed in a rare vulnerable moment. When their mother finally kicked them out, the brothers didn't just share DNA, they shared trauma, struggle, and an unbreakable bond forged in the fires of adversity. Meanwhile, in Minneapolis, a young RL experienced a different kind of pain. His 2-parent household might have looked perfect from the outside, but inside, his father's constant belittlement created wounds that shaped his fierce independence. The day RL nearly ended his life, grabbing his mother's gun before being institutionalized wasn't just a dark memory, it was the crucible that formed his approach to life. When these different worlds collided in the recording studio, the result was explosive talent but underlying incompatibility. The Brown brothers moved as one unit, while RL, forever the outsider, approached everything as a solo artist temporarily sharing the spotlight. One former producer described, the Brown brothers would glance at each other before making decisions, a silent communication built over decades. RL never looked to anyone for confirmation. They simply operated from completely different operating systems that could never truly integrate. When Too Close erupted across airwaves in 1997, it didn't just dominate charts, it dominated culture. Their debut album, Rated Next, went double platinum, cementing them in R&B royalty. The night they swept the Billboard Music Award, taking home 8 trophies in a single evening, a record that still stands unbroken, should have been their crowning achievement. That night felt like we were untouchable, Tweet later revealed. 8 awards in one night? Who does that? But backstage, after the cameras stopped rolling, we weren't even speaking to each other. Success didn't just knock on their door, it kicked it down. Tour buses, private jets, sold-out venues across the country, screaming fans waiting at hotels. But unlike groups bonded by genuine brotherhood, Next didn't weather this storm together. They each sought shelter separately. A former tour manager remembered, most groups celebrate together after big shows. These guys, they had separate hotel rooms, separate cars, separate everything. The only time they were truly together was on stage or when cameras were rolling. The cruel irony was that each new achievement didn't bring them closer. It drove the wedge deeper. Album sales created arguments about publishing splits. Award nominations sparked debates about who contributed more. As one industry veteran put it, some groups pray for success to save them. For Next, success was the very thing that exposed every crack in their foundation. As Next dominated the charts, RL's phone wouldn't stop ringing, but not just for Next business. A-list artists, legendary producers, major labels, they all wanted a piece of the songwriting magic RL brought to the table. What started as occasional side projects quickly evolved into something more threatening to the group's dynamic. Imagine being in a relationship where your partner is openly entertaining other suitors. That's how the Brown brothers felt watching RL's solo, Star Rise. When Deborah Cox's We Can't Be Friends went gold with RL's writing credited, the whispers began. When The Best Man I Can Be became a soundtrack staple with RL collaborating with Tyrese, Genuine, and Case, those whispers turned to shouts. It felt like watching someone have an affair right in front of you, Tweet later admitted. RL would miss group rehearsals because he was writing for Luther Vandross. How were we supposed to feel? Industry insiders watched the tension build with each outside project RL touched. One producer recalled a particularly heated exchange. Tweet shouted, "Are you in this group or not?" And RL just coldly replied, "When it suits me." The room went silent. That was the moment I knew Next wouldn't last. A former label executive explained, RL had the songwriting gift, and in this industry, that's currency. The others had talent, but RL had a talent that could transcend the group. He knew it, they knew it, and that knowledge poisoned everything. Money doesn't just talk in the music industry, it screams. The breaking point came during a particularly profitable tour, when Tweet noticed discrepancies in his payment compared to statements provided by management. Picture this scene. Three young men who once created musical magic together, now separated by lawyers in a sterile conference room as financial records were examined line by line. What they found, or believed they found, drove the final nail in Next's coffin. "I trusted you," Tweet reportedly shouted at both RL and even his own brother Tilo during one closed-door meeting. "We came from nothing together, and this is how you repay me? By stealing what's mine?" When Tweet publicly accused both RL and his own blood brother of financial impropriety, industry insiders knew Next was beyond saving. Former road crew members recall the tension becoming so thick you could cut it with a knife. They would perform too close on stage, perfectly in sync, smiling for the fans, one tour manager remembered. Then they'd walk off stage and immediately head in 3 different directions, not speaking a word to each other. A former accountant revealed it wasn't even about the actual money anymore. It was about what the money represented: respect, value, and who was considered most important to Next's success. By the end, they couldn't agree on anything financial, from tour merchandise splits to recording budget allocation. In 2002, the music industry held its breath as RL made the move everyone had been anticipating yet dreading. He officially stepped out as a solo artist. His debut album, RL Elements, was positioned to be his triumphant declaration of independence, the proof that he was the true star all along. Then reality hit like a cold shower. The album flopped. No hit singles emerged. Sales figures disappointed. Radio play was minimal. The solo star that everyone had assumed would shine brighter alone suddenly found himself dimmed. You could feel the schadenfreude in the air, one radio programmer admitted years later. There were plenty of industry people silently celebrating RL's struggle because they felt he'd abandoned his group for selfish reasons. Meanwhile, the Brown brothers weren't celebrating. They were fuming. It wasn't RL's failure that angered them. It was that he'd left them hanging in purgatory. Group projects had been put on hold. Tour opportunities had been declined. "He left us in limbo," Tilo revealed later. "We couldn't move forward as Next because contracts and obligations were unclear. We couldn't pursue our own things because we were still technically a group. We were stuck watching RL chase his solo career while our own careers gathered dust. The studio sessions became painful to witness." A label executive shared, "3 talented men who once created magic together were now barely acknowledging each other's presence. They'd record their parts separately when possible. The creative synergy that had made Next special was completely gone, while the group was publicly disintegrating. Private battles were being waged that would forever tarnish the Next legacy." Tweet, the quieter half of the Brown brothers, found himself at the center of serious domestic violence allegations, not once, but twice. Courtroom sketches of Tweet facing a judge replaced music video stills in the media. Police reports detailed disturbing accusations that contradicted his smooth, romantic persona on records. Though he vehemently denied the charges, the court of public opinion had already delivered its verdict. "It was shocking," one former fan, club president, remembered. "These were the men who sang Wifey and other songs that celebrated women. To see those allegations, it made you question everything about the image they'd presented." Meanwhile, RL's financial house of cards was collapsing. When news broke that he had filed for bankruptcy, it seemed like the final indignity for a man who had once stood atop the R&B world. "I didn't steal the money," RL would later insist, his publicist blaming an unscrupulous accountant for the financial disaster. These personal struggles weren't happening in isolation. They were playing out while Next was attempting to maintain some semblance of a united front. A former stylist recalled one particularly tense photo shoot. Tweet had just come from a court appearance that morning. RL had been on the phone with creditors, yet they were expected to smile and look like the heartthrobs everyone had fallen in love with. The disconnect between image and reality was heartbreaking to witness. The end didn't come with a dramatic public announcement or a final blowout fight. It arrived with Tweet's quiet exit in 2003, the culmination of years of festering resentment and unresolved grievances. The group didn't break up so much as it finally acknowledged the break that had existed from the beginning. Imagine the weight of that moment. Tweet, who had stood beside his brother Tilo since childhood, now walking away not just from from RL but from his own blood, citing financial exploitation as the reason. The accusation cut deeper than any creative difference ever could. "I can handle a lot of things," Tweet later confessed in a rare interview about the split. "Disagreements about music, about image, about direction. That's all part of being in a group. But when you discover people you trusted with your career, your art, your livelihood have been taking advantage, there's no coming back from that." While Tweet moved on, RL attempted to recapture the magic of a group dynamic by forming a new supergroup with Q from 112 and Wingo from Jagged Edge. The project garnered initial excitement, but quickly fizzled, proving that chemistry can't be manufactured, even with established stars. The way Next ended wasn't really surprising to anyone who had worked closely with them, one former tour promoter explained. What was surprising was that they managed to hold it together as long as they did, given the fundamental issues that existed from day one. In 2018, a curious thing happened. Next announced they were back. All three original members stood together at a press conference, smiling for cameras, talking about healing old wounds, and giving the fans what they've been asking for. It should have been triumphant. Instead, it felt hollow. Their comeback, single Watt, dropped with minimal fanfare. No major label push, no significant radio play, just the echo of what once was. The music video featured three middle-aged men attempting to recapture the swagger and chemistry of their youth, but something crucial was missing. The reunion looked good on paper, one music blogger wrote at the time, but watching them perform together again was like seeing divorced parents pretend to be a couple at their child's wedding, technically together, but the love is long gone. Behind the scenes, the same old problems resurfaced almost immediately. Without major label backing, finances became an issue from day one. A sound engineer who worked on their reunion material shared, they recorded their parts on different days whenever possible. The producer would piece together their vocals later. That's not a reunion. That's three solo artists being compiled into a group track. They weren't doing it for the love of the music or each other, one insider revealed. They were doing it because their individual careers had stalled, and the Next brand still had value as a nostalgia act. After a brief flurry of activity, they quietly drifted apart again, not with a bang, but with a whimper. 2 decades after Too Close first dominated airwaves, the legacy of Next remains complicated. Their music still plays at cookouts and 90s nights, but the story behind those perfect harmonies serves as a cautionary tale for the industry. When Too Close unexpectedly went viral again in 2015 thanks to the "Why You Always Lying" meme, RL's reaction spoke volumes. Rather than celebrating this unexpected resurrection of interest, he admitted feeling anger that his life's work had been reduced to an internet joke. "That song wasn't just a hit for us," RL later explained. "It was the culmination of years of work, of vision, of genuine artistry. To see it turned into a punchline, it felt like watching something sacred being trivialized." Music historians now point to Next as a prime example of what happens when business overtakes brotherhood in the music industry. Their catalog, relatively small compared to contemporaries who stayed together longer, hints at unrealized potential. "Listen to their harmonies, their arrangements," one music professor who teaches about 90s R&B explained. There was something special happening there musically. If they had managed to work through their differences, who knows what they might have created. Today, all three former members lead separate lives. RL continues writing and producing, his talent undeniable, even if his solo stardom never matched expectations. Tweet, now performing as Tweet IES Pars, creates music on his own terms. Tilo maintains the lowest profile, occasionally appearing at industry events but largely staying behind the scenes. The true tragedy of Next isn't that they broke up. Most groups eventually do. It's that they never truly formed in the first place. As one industry veteran summarized, Next could have been one of the greatest R&B groups of all time. They had the voices, the looks, the song. What they didn't have was the one thing you can't manufacture: genuine brotherhood.